It's a new year, and when a new year rolls around, a lot of people tend to set themselves goals, and that goal may be to start digital art. If that's the case, well, this is the video for you. Hey guys, I'm Jago, and welcome to 100 digital art tips and tricks. Whether you're a complete beginner artist, or maybe you're a traditional artist who is moving to digital for the first time, or maybe even if you're an experienced artist just looking for ways to improve and expand your skills, these tips will help you learn some of the best practices for digital art. I compiled this list myself using my knowledge I've learned over the years, as well as asking for ideas from other digital artists. And we all came together to come up with ideas for things that could help you all watching this video learn something new. And hopefully you do. So without further ado, let's get on with it. Number 1. Don't shade with pure black or pure white. You've probably heard this one a lot, and that's because if you do this in your art, then it's going to end up looking very flat. You want to use a dark and light tone of a colour. Most common is using blue because it's very neutral light, but really you can use any colour you want depending on the lighting that is in your art piece. For example, if you're drawing a sunset scene, then you're probably going to use reds, oranges and purples in your shading rather than blue. There are, however, occasions where you can use pure black and white. It really does depend on the style you're going for. For example, comic books tend to use this pure black for cell shading. Number 2. Use references. One of the most important things in learning how to draw is using references, be it from real life or from images online. References help you learn how everything is shaped, because everything can be broken down into basic shapes. And taking out reference images means you can cross-match between your drawing and the image to see how accurate you're getting your drawing and how much you understand the fundamentals of the geometry of whatever you're drawing. Number 3. Don't trace other people's art. This is essentially stealing, and it's a mistake a lot of beginner artists actually make, because they see art they really like and they think, oh, I want to be that good, and then they trace that art so they can feel as good as the artist they're looking up to. This isn't something you should do, not only because you are essentially stealing the other person's art, but you're also not going to learn much by tracing someone else's art style. Really, you want to be developing your own art style. If you trace other people's art, you are going to be stuck in a rut and never get out of it. You will never be able to develop your own art style, and you will never be able to improve. So don't trace other people's artwork. Number 4. Do trace reference images. Tracing reference images, that being real life photographs, can do you wonders for learning geometry and understanding shapes and developing your art style. Because this way you're not just copying someone else's style, this way you're looking at the shapes, interpreting what is really there in real life, and finding a way to put that down on paper in your own way. Number 5. Use layers. Every digital art program allows you to have layers, meaning you can keep different parts of your drawing separated. This allows you to go back and edit certain areas without affecting other parts, and it's just a really good way to organise your drawings and makes your workflow much more efficient. Number 6. Use preserve opacity clipping groups or masks. Now these are highly valuable and useful options, and pretty much every art program has them. They allow you to essentially draw within an already created shape, and prevents whatever you're drawing going over the outside of that shape. For example, I had this circle here, and I want to fill the circle with stripes, and if I use preserve opacity, I can just draw over the top of it without my lines going over the edge of the circle, giving nice clean stripes. This also works with clipping groups, which are the same thing except it's done on a new layer, and masks, which are also the same sort of thing, except it creates a literal mask of the empty space and prevent what is under that mask from being seen. Number 7. If you like to shade your reference sheets of your original characters, then make sure to include a colour palette with it. This way, anyone that is drawing your characters, which is very common if you're one of the artists that join in on the annual Art Fight event, can just pick the colours straight from that direct colour palette. They don't have to try to figure out what colours your OC is through the shading, because shading can change the colour quite drastically. So if you do shade your reference sheet, always make sure to have a colour palette on the side for others to use. Number 8. Work on a larger canvas for more detail. Canvases are measured in pixels, meaning the larger it is, the more pixels can fit on that canvas. And the more pixels that can fit on a canvas, the more detail you can put in. For example, I used to draw on just 1920 by 1080, which is pretty good, it looks alright, but I recently swapped over to 3840 by 2160, which gives me so much more room to work with, and my art has drastically increased in detail since doing that. Number 9. Make use of both colour selectors. A lot of programs will have a primary and a secondary colour, which is where you see your selected colour and then there's another one underneath it. This essentially means you can have two colours selected at the same time. When I'm doing my rendering, I tend to have a lighter tone and a darker tone selected at the same time. That way I can just use my program's shortcut, which is X, to easily switch between the two colours and use them for my strokes whenever needed. Literally the second that I need them, I can use them. Number 10. Adapt your own style. A lot of beginner artists have trouble finding their own style. And the mistake they make is they tend to only look up to one artist, and then they try to sort of match their drawing style to that artist. And that way they're kind of forcing themselves into this corner. They're not allowing themselves to expand out and adapt to what is more comfortable to them, because they're trying to copy what this other artist is more used to. Make sure to branch out and experiment and try and adapt your own style, rather than focusing on the style of one person and getting tunnel vision with that artist. Draw your inspiration from many different sources and put it together in a way that feels comfortable and unique to you. Number 11. Don't use AI. This is really self-explanatory, just don't use it. And it's not just using AI to make the arts for you, and I say art in air quotes, but also I see a lot of artists thinking it's okay to reference from AI. And quite frankly, it's not. Because AI makes mistakes. AI makes glaring mistakes, especially with anatomy and lighting. It often gets anatomy wrong, and quite often the lighting is iffy as well. And if you're referencing from these AI images, you're going to think that's how it should be, and it's not. AI gets it wrong, and if you reference from AI, you're going to get it wrong as well. Number 12. Use line weight variation. If you followed my channel for a while, you know that I will sing this to the heavens. Line weight variation is the key to making your line work pop. If you struggle from flat to line work, or you think your line art always looks worse in your sketch, you are likely not making use of line weight variation. And this is where you vary the size and thickness of your line throughout the drawing. I tend to do it in areas where it's a lot lighter, or areas of small detail. Then I will do thin, faint, small lines. If it's areas that are dark edges or going to be in shadow, or need to be really bold to distinguish it from another area, then I use darker, thicker lines. And doing this makes your line work just look so much better, and it just makes the whole piece pop even more. Number 13. Texture your piece. Rather than just having flat colours, which is okay if that's the style you're going for, but otherwise, use a painterly brush to texture those colours. Use this texturing to not only add the look of what the material you're drawing is, but also to define 3D shapes. Define where these invisible edges are that you wouldn't have drawn in line work. Really think about how the lighting impacting your subject bends to its 3D form. It's really where you can bring out all your detail. For example, here where I'm drawing Springtrap, I'm using it to really exaggerate all his cracks and his mouldy, grimy suit. And adding in all these textures just really sells the realism of it, as well as making it look so much more 3D. Number 14. Don't edge shade. Edge shading is when you only shade against your lines at the edge of the shape. This works in some instances depending on the shape of what you are drawing, but most of the time, a 3D object will not have a shadow only on the bottom edge or a light only on the top edge. The lights will bend around its form, and you will see highlights and shadows in different areas of the object rather than just on the edges. Number 15. Use a mixture of soft and sharp edges. When I was starting off my art journey, I had the wrong idea of thinking I needed to blend absolutely everything. I thought for something to be realistic, then there had to be no hard edges because that's too cartoony, and so I had to blend everything. In realism, there is still hard edges to be seen. For example, think about the roof of a house. The sun is hitting the house above it into the side, so one half of the roof is lit up. However, the roof has a sharp transition between each side, meaning this side actually blocks the light from hitting the other side, and that side is in complete darkness. And because of that sharp transition, it creates quite a hard edge. So hard edges are just as applicable as soft edges. Number 16. Customize your brushes to your liking. Every program will come with a default set of brushes, and you may not get on with them at first. So always feel free to edit these brushes, mess around with them, experiment, and get their settings to how you like it. Number 17. Get a graphics tablet or a decent stylus. Drawing with a mouse on computer or your finger on phone or tablet is just really difficult, and it's going to really hinder you in your art journey. Yes, you are capable of doing it, you can do it, but your improvement is going to be really slow as a result because you just cannot do some of the things that you need to do to make your art pop out a bit more. For example, without a graphics tablet or a stylus, you can't use pressure sensitivity, meaning you can't really get that line weight variation without having to go in and add it in manually, which looks less natural. You can find really cheap small graphics tablets online, and as for tablets and phones, you can find plenty of styluses online that support pressure sensitivity and will work great to just really improve your art's workflow. Number 18. Learn the keyboard shortcuts for your program. On PC programs, if you learn all your keyboard shortcuts, you can greatly increase the efficiency of your workflow, This also applies for apps where there are gesture controls. Learn what your different gestures and tapping with how many fingers does on your app. For example, on Procreate, tapping with so many fingers will actually work as an undo. So learning both of these will help you get more efficient with your workflow. Number 19, flip your canvas. A tip you've probably heard a lot. Flipping your canvas means you're looking at it with a fresh eye, and any mistakes you would become blind to are now very visible to your eye. This is actually something I don't do, and I really should do it, and there have been mistakes in my art because I don't do it. So don't be like me. Seriously, flip your canvas, spot those mistakes and get them sorted. Number 20, do a construction sketch first made up of simple shapes. As I said before, every single object can be broken down into geometry and simple shapes. For example, even a human being can be stripped down to different sized boxes, and this will help you make a guide for whatever you are trying to draw, and it will make your actual refined sketch a lot easier to do. Number 21, use blending modes. Every arts program has these, and it's when you put something such as opacity or multiply or screen onto your layer. These blending modes give those layers different effects and can be great for getting the look you're wanting to achieve. For example, most commonly overlay, multiply and screen are used for shading and lighting. I also like to use the hard light or hard mix blending modes in order to get those really bright shines and glows. Number 22, draw what you actually see, not what you think you see. This applies when you are doing studies or drawing from references or life. A common mistake people make is that they will look at the shape and they will interpret it in their own way, whereas when you're trying to learn, it's important that you draw what you're actually seeing rather than what your brain thinks it's seeing, because that way you can learn the actual shapes of what you are drawing. And as you become more experienced, then you can start getting creative and interpret it in different ways. Number 23, learn your program and get used to it. An efficient workflow is key for feeling quite happy and uplifted when you're drawing, at least it is for me. And so learning your program and getting used to it inside out will help you get really comfortable with drawing and start to just be able to pick up your pen and draw without even having to think about it. Number 24, practice often and gain experience. Experience is the most important thing in art. It's the sort of thing that you can really only learn by doing. You can sit down and you can listen to people, but that can only take you so far. Doing drawing, actually the act of drawing, is what is going to help you improve. So if you are serious about learning to draw or improving your skills, then make sure to practice often, and maybe even see if you've got any local art classes or anything that you can go join. Number 25, draw your environment before placing your character or object. It doesn't have to be really refined, it could be a rough sketch, but making sure you have the idea of your environment down first is really important, because that way you can then match the subjects of the drawing, be it a character or an object, to the perspective of your environment. It is much easier to match the subject to the environment than the environment to the subject. Number 26, try not to colour pick from references. Now this isn't an awful thing to do, but learning how to make the colours yourself and interpret them from a reference is really important, and you will improve much more if you can learn that and learn how to interpret how light affects colours or how colours blend together, than just straight up using an eyedropper and picking the colour straight from the reference. Number 27, do a grayscale painting. At some point in your art journey, I would highly recommend doing a grayscale painting. This is because it's just as important to learn values as it is to learn about colours. Values are essentially the lightness or the darkness of a colour, and learning to use these values is invaluable in your work. Pun not intended, but it's still a pretty good pun. So doing a grayscale painting will help you figure out where to put values in relation to lighting, without having to worry about the colours themselves at that point. From there you can then expand that and start adding in colours with values, but I would start with a grayscale painting just to help you get the idea of how values work. Number 28, be happy with your sketch before moving on to line work. If you're an artist that draws line art, you likely draw over the top of your pre-existing sketch. I find it's always best to make sure your sketch is how you want it before moving on to line art. Of course you could edit things in line art, you could draw things a bit differently, but I tend to find that transforming and deforming your lines can make them look a bit blurry and artifacted. So I prefer to edit my sketch and then draw my line work over that, rather than draw my line work over the sketch and then edit in the line work. Number 29, lower the opacity of your sketch when doing your lines. This will make it much easier to see what you're doing with your line work, because if you had your sketch on high opacity, it could be hard to distinguish between your line work and the sketch. So just lowering that opacity a bit on the sketch helps you see a bit better and will help you draw your line work more comfortably. Number 30, separate areas of your drawing/sketch by colours. By this I mean, if you're doing a big complicated drawing or you're drawing a character design with a lot of different details and pieces on it, a good way to determine what's what is to colour code it. Me personally, I will tend to do the main body in red, do some extra accessories in blue, and then any other small details in green. This means when I'm lining it and when I'm colouring it, I can understand which part is which. Number 31. If you have intersecting or overlapping lines, draw them on separate layers to make erasing easier and cleaner. By this I mean if you need to draw two lines that are nice simple curves that you need to use your whole arm for, but you're going to find it hard to stop at the end without overlapping, then do it on a separate layer, because that way you can just erase the overlap without having to worry about affecting the line underneath. Number 32. More expensive does not equal better. A common misconception is that the more expensive a program or a piece of equipment is, the better it is. This does apply in some cases, but most of the time the cheaper products can work just as well as the more expensive products. Like I was saying earlier, you can get really small cheap graphics tablets, just little pad tablets, and they work perfectly fine. And even when it comes to art programs and apps, there are ones that are completely free, such as Ibis Paint or Fire Alpaca or things like that are really good, and they're completely free. So don't get caught in the trap that you need to spend more money to improve. Number 33. Step out of your comfort zone. This may sound scary, but you are never going to improve if you just keep doing the same thing over and over. Sometimes in order to improve and learn, you need to do something that scares you a little. For example, with me, I cannot draw people, I cannot draw humans, and honestly it scares me to try because every time I try to do it, it looks awful. But I know I am never going to learn unless I step out of my comfort zone and keep trying to draw them until I learn. Otherwise, I'm going to stagnate and never improve and never learn. So make sure to expand your horizons and be open-minded and ready to learn. Number 34. Watch speed paints. I am a completely self-taught artist, and I actually learned most of what I know from watching speed paints. Speed paints are where artists record their drawing process and then speed it up so that it doesn't take as long and put it online. You can find plenty of these on YouTube. You can even find ones for the specific program you use, and watching these just helped me understand art workflow and how the program I use works, all the different shortcuts and tools I can use, and it really helped me. Number 35. Use brush textures, shapes and effects. Most programs have the ability to just put a texture on your brush. This makes a really easy way to add texture to your work and make things look more 3D. You can even go online and download different textures for your brushes depending on your arts program or app. And these custom brushes can seriously be lifesavers, so make sure to use brush textures and look online if you're looking for something specific. Number 36. Use a stabilizer for your lines. You may be like me where you have incredibly shaky hands, and maybe you think I can't draw because my hands are too shaky, which makes my lines shaky. Well, don't worry about it, because most programs have an inbuilt stabilizer. And what this does is it makes it so the line moves ever so slightly slower than your actual pen, which allows it to be much smoother. Number 37. Don't compare yourself to other artists. This can be really demoralising. As a young artist, I would find myself looking up to these other big artists and then putting myself down by saying, oh, I'll never be as good as them. But now look where I am. So don't look up to other artists and put yourself down in their shadow. You are going to always be improving. You are going to be a great artist. You are a great artist. You are unique. You are wonderful. Keep going. Don't get yourself down. You're going to be amazing. Number 38. Use the available tools to your advantage. I do see some traditional artists sometimes feeling like it's a bit cheaty to use some of the tools that the programs have. But if the tools are there, then why not use them to make your workflow more efficient and help you improve your art? For example, the program I use, Paintool Sci V2, has what's called a line work layer, which lets me plot points for a line and curve it smoothly, rather than having to draw that curve myself, which really helps me if it's a hard angle that I can't quite get right by hand. So feel free to use all the tools at your disposal, because trust me, in digital art, it's not cheating at all. Because in reality, it's using AI that's cheating. Number 39. Don't strive for perfection. Honestly, being a perfectionist sucks, because you feel like you're never good enough. You feel like everything you make isn't perfect and it's never good enough. It's never up to your standard, and that is going to hurt you. It's going to harm your mentality when it comes to art and drawing. And really the best way to look at learning to draw and improvement is to say, yeah, it's not perfect, but it's better, or it's good, or even I can see where I went wrong and I know how to fix that for the next time. So don't worry about being utterly perfect. Just do what you can and be proud of what you've made. Number 40. Don't outline absolutely everything. Now this does depend on the style, but if you're going for a more semi-realistic or realistic style, lining everything can take away from that. Don't be afraid to rely on rendering and painting to add in some more detail. You don't have to line every detail. Let the paintbrush do it for you. But of course, if you're going for a cartoony style, then you can line as much as you want. Number 41. Use complementary colours. Complementary colours are colours that sit opposite each other on the colour wheel. For example, red and green. These colours go wonderfully together, and using them can really harmonise your artwork. Number 42, don't use oversaturated colours, unless it's the style or feel or look that you're going for, because of course this can be a stylistic choice where you use very high contrast colours, but otherwise, try not to use oversaturated colours, especially for a semi-realistic or realistic style. Don't go too muted either. There is a perfect balance that can be very difficult to get, but the best advice I can give is to just really think about the lighting, and think about what colour that lighting casts. Number 43, keep all of your old art. This is so that you can look back and compare your art from before to now. This way you are going to see improvement, and even if it's small improvements, it's still improvement. And this can help give you a massive confidence and motivation boost. Number 44, when painting, make your mid-tone more vibrant in value than your shadow tone. This way, when you blend the shadow tone to the highlight tone using that mid-tone, it won't end up looking muddy. Number 45, name your layers. Don't be me. Don't end up with this mess that you see here. If you name your layers, then it'll be much easier to find exactly what layer you're looking for and where you want to work, and it'll keep everything nice and organised. I also like to use the layer groups to keep things organised as well. Number 46, avoid tangents. Tangents are when the edges of two shapes or lines connect in a way that they look like they are one line. Tangents are only applicable in very few circumstances, such as maybe boxes that are stacked on top of each other, but even then you can still slightly offset them so you can avoid this indistinguishable tangent so that the boxes do look separate. Number 47, learn the basics. These are things such as colour theory, anatomy, perspective, the sort of things you need to know in your head in order to translate them down onto paper. There are so many tutorials online on YouTube for free. You can learn from those, or you can join an official arts class, but I would highly recommend using YouTube tutorials because they could be more specific to what you are trying to learn. Number 48, unify your colour palette. Doing this means any character or object can appear as if they are actually within the environment that you've drawn. For example, if you have a nighttime scene with it being moonlit, you'll want to unify your character's colours to that scene, and you can do this by adding a blue tone over all of it. That way the lighting of the environment is on the character or object, and it unifies them to the environment you've created. Number 49, save often. Please. Keep pressing Ctrl S constantly. You make a line, press Ctrl S. There are so many programs and apps that are prone to crashing, especially Adobe. So please make sure you are saving often so that you don't lose your work. Number 50, don't chicken scratch your sketches. Chicken scratch is a term for when you sort of scribble your sketches down, which can make them look very, very messy, but it can make it very, very difficult for you to then draw your line work over the top of that. If you have a messy sketch, it can be hard to determine what's what. So when sketching, try and keep your lines and movements just nice and smooth. It may be hard to break out of that habit at first, but trust me, it will feel so much better doing it this way. Number 51, use the transform and deform tools. If you make a small mistake, be it maybe have a line that's ever so slightly off, you can use a transform or deform tool just to slightly nudge it back into place. I won't do this too much since, as I mentioned before, this can cause pixelization and artifacting in your lines, but if it's just a small mistake on one little bit and you need to just nudge it back into place, do not be afraid to use transform and deform tools. Number 52, choose where your light source is coming from. Make sure you have a clear idea of where your light source is. For example, if your character is in a dark room and there's one singular light bulb, and that light bulb is in the top left corner, that's your light source. And make sure all highlights come from that direction and the shadows are in the other direction. Number 53, don't be discouraged if you make a bad drawing. I put bad in air quotes because I don't like to call any drawing bad, but if you make something that you perceive yourself as a bad drawing, don't be discouraged, don't be unmotivated. It's all part of the learning process and it's all part of your journey to improvement. So really, every mistake, every bad bit of art is improvement. Number 54, draw with intention. Make sure you understand what you are doing and why you are doing it. This goes back to what I was saying about don't trace from other people's art, because if you do that, then you don't understand why that artist has made the decisions that they've made. And you are just blindly tracing that without really understanding yourself why this shape is here, or why that line's here, or why that shadow or highlight is there. You need to make sure that you learn and that you understand, and you can use plenty of tutorials to help you do this. Number 55, surround yourself with other artists. The art community can be a really friendly place, especially the digital art community. Don't be afraid to find some artist friends, because being surrounded by other artists means you can come together for motivation as well as constructive criticism, because it's always good to have a fresh set of eyes look at your work and spot something that you can't can't see. And because they are also artists, they know what they're talking about. Number 56. If you feel the urge to draw, just do it. Don't think too hard about it. If you feel like you want to draw, just pick up a pen, pick up your tablet, and just go for it. It could be really rough doodles or sketches, it doesn't have to be a full-blown piece. Take advantage of that sudden motivation and use it to gain experience. Number 57. Take breaks. Sometimes stepping away from a piece for a little bit and then coming back later can help you see it in a new light. Sometimes I finish a piece of art and I really dislike it, and then I'll go back to it a day or two later and realise, hey, it's not actually that bad. And sometimes while you're drawing, just taking that moment to step away, even if it's just for a few minutes or an hour or a day, can help you then come back with a fresh mind. You can feel more refreshed and you can approach what you're doing with a more positive mindset, and it might also help you spot mistakes that you didn't see before. Number 58. Warm up or cool down your shading tones. By this I mean when you are choosing a shadow or highlight colour, rather than just going lighter or darker on the colour wheel, also think about the value in terms of a warmer colour or a cooler colour. Warmer colours tend to be reds, oranges, yellows. Cooler colours tend to be blues and greens. So when making these shading tones, just slightly move the colour wheel towards one of these colours. I tend to use warmer for highlights and cooler for shadows. Number 59. Use your whole arm, not just your wrist. Drawing using your whole arm for movement, be it just from your elbow or your shoulder, can help you get much better curves, much smoother lines. Just moving your wrist does have some applications though. If you have a very small line you need to draw, then by all means just use your wrist. But otherwise, try get used to using your whole arm instead. Number 60. Use posing tools. These are especially helpful for drawing humans. There are plenty of online tools you can use to pose a doll, which you can then pose, take a screenshot of and trace over for the pose you're going for. Or you can even go the route of downloading a free program such as Blender and then downloading free models and posing them that way yourself. This helps you make your own specific references that you need. Number 61. Draw in the viewer's eye to the focal point. You can do this by balancing detail and lighting. Focus the main detail onto the subject of your drawing. Think about where you want the viewer's eye to be drawn to the first time they look at your work. It can also help to use red because it is the most visually striking colour to the human eye. Number 62. When doing studies, don't worry about them being perfect. Studies are there purely to help you learn, and the point of them is that you don't think too hard about it, you just do it. So don't get caught up in all the detail, worry more about learning the shapes and the form of what you're referencing or studying, and that way you're going to learn much quicker. Number 63. Use a white layer to check your values. We spoke about values before and how they're important, so if you're doing a painting and you feel maybe your values are a little bit off, you can use a white layer on a colour blending mode to turn your piece to grayscale and allow you to check how your values are going and edit them as need be. Number 64. Colour your line art. This one is a bit more of a personal preference. I prefer not to do this, but sometimes colouring your line arts can look really good, especially if you're using it to complement the shading. For example, here, I have coloured the line work where there is a highlight to really exaggerate the harsh light that is hitting this object. Number 65. To soften your line art, duplicate it and blur it. There's a very popular style that people do where they've softened their line art really nicely. A lot of people don't know how to do this, so all you need to do is duplicate your line work layer, put it underneath, give it a slight blur, and then edit the opacity to your liking. Ta-da! Softer line art. Number 66. Use mood boards. If you are designing something, be it an environment or a character design, using mood boards can really help for inspiration. Try and think about the general theme of what you're designing, and then grab images just from Google Images and put them together on one mood board so you can just look at that all in the same place and come up with ideas. Number 67. If you have art block, try scrolling through the internet. Sometimes I find if I have art block, having to scroll through something like DeviantArt or Blue Sky or Reddit or Pinterest can help me get my inspiration and motivation back for drawing. I also find that listening to music or watching movies really helps as well, because these help me form ideas in my head of things that I might want to draw. Number 68. Do multiple passes of your sketch. Your sketch doesn't have to be perfect the first try. If you sketch something out but you feel like it's not quite right, and maybe it's getting a bit too messy from all the edits you're making now, just put that on a lower opacity, make a new layer on top and sketch back over it. And with this new sketch you can make the intended edits. And that way you will now have your sketch but it will be much cleaner and edited the way you like it. You could do this as many times as you feel necessary before moving on to your refined line work. Number 69. Your methods don't have to be 100% set in stone. By this I mean, don't think you have to do everything exactly the same way every single time you draw. It's best to be flexible and adapt to what you are drawing, especially if you are looking at experimenting with different styles, going from maybe realism to cartoon. You're going to have to change how you work in order to fit those different styles, so make sure you know how to be flexible. Number 70. Add subtle detail with your line work. It doesn't have to be much, just very subtle, small, faded lines, really making use of your pressure sensitivity. This can help define a few details and textures. Number 71. Create depth using line art. You can do this by using different techniques such as hatching, which is where you use a lot of small lines to create a darker area, and it also helps add a lot more of a 3D form to your drawing. Do this by lightly drawing multiple lines, making sure they're all going in the same direction and are consistent with each other. Number 72. Lines don't have to be perfect. Experiment with different types of strokes and pen movements to convey the idea of the material, texture or shape that you are going for. For example, this bit of rock here has a very jagged texture, and therefore my line looks like it's much more shaky and a lot more organic, whereas this metal box has very straight inorganic lines. Adapts to what you are drawing. Number 73. Rotate your canvas. If you are struggling to draw a line, then just rotate your canvas. Most programs and apps allow you to do this, and that way you can draw it from a different and more comfortable angle. Number 74. Adjust pressure sensitivity to suit you. Pressure sensitivity can be really harsh or really light. People have different preferences depending on if they are heavy-handed or light-handed. For me, I'm quite heavy-handed, so I have adjusted my pressure sensitivity to not be as sensitive. That way my lines aren't always really thick and dark because I'm so heavy-handed. Number 75. Don't always use overlay layers. I used to always use overlay layers for my shading, but sometimes it just doesn't show up on certain colours, white being the most common problem with it, which sucks when I have a main mascot who is a white dragon. So use whatever blending mode works well for the situation. For example, if I'm drawing and shading Willow, who is my mascot, then I will use a multiply or shade layer instead of an overlay layer. Number 76. Use a symmetry tool. This applies if you're doing something that is maybe facing straight on or is going to be symmetrical on both sides. Classic example is a butterfly. Don't be afraid to use a symmetry tool to make sure it's exact on both sides, and if you don't have a symmetry tool, you can just draw one half and then copy and paste it and then flip it horizontally. Number 77. Try a textured eraser. If you have this highly textured piece, but you need to erase a little bit of it, apply that same texture to your razor brush as well, because that way when you erase a bit you need to erase, it'll keep the edges sort of textured exactly how you want them and keep everything nice and consistent. Number 78. Brightness and contrast. If your finished piece looks a bit too dull for what you wanted, just take the exported file and then slightly up the brightness and contrast on it. This can just slightly help it pop out a bit more and look less faded. Number 79. Do what works for you. Every artist is different, and every artist has different methods. Don't feel that you have to do exactly what someone else does. You'll find methods and techniques that feel comfortable to you and work for you, even if they're different from what everyone else does. If it works for you, it works. So don't be afraid of that. Number 80. Don't dive straight into detail. Try and block out your drawing first and figure out what's going to go where. Because otherwise you may draw part of your piece and make it really detailed, but then later realise it is going to be in very dark shadow and be mostly covered up anyway. So make sure you plan your piece before diving straight in. Number 81. Do multiple layers of shading. You don't have to have just one layer for shadows and one layer for highlights. You can use several layers to gradually build up your shading. It especially works if you have areas that need to be a lot darker or areas that need to be a lot lighter. Number 82. Consider the 3D space. Don't look at your drawing as just a flat drawing. Think about if that was an object you were actually holding in your hand, how would the light in your room be affecting it? For example, with this sphere, if it were in this room on the floor and there was a light above it, the light would be bouncing off the floor and hitting the bottom of the ball as well. So it's knowing about these sort of shading techniques such as bounce lighting that help you really drive home the 3D space and environment. And also think about the curves and shape of that object and how light will bend around it. Number 83. Try not to scribble. Scribbling works in certain aspects and styles, but most of the time you want to avoid it. So before each stroke, try lift your pen, even if just ever so slightly. It will make everything look much smoother. Number 84. Use colour palettes. You can easily find online colour palettes, and they can help if you're stuck on what colours to use for your artwork. They can also help you learn colour theory. Number 85. Make a palette of your base colours. This way, when you are painting and rendering, if you ever need to go back to your original colour for whatever reason, be it because you've made a mistake and you just want to paint back over it with the original colour, then you could do so by just colour picking from the palettes that you have made. Number 86. Don't waste your time fully rendering hidden areas. I've made this mistake before, where I put so much detail into texture in this area, only to realise it's actually completely hidden by shadow. If you have an area that you know is going to be really dark, or going to be overlapping and covered up by something, don't bother putting the detail or time or effort into that area, because it's not going to be seen anyway. Number 87. Think about how shadows form. Some shadows are going to be hard, some shadows are going to be soft. And you need to think about where your light source is in order to determine this. If a light source is really close to an object, then the shadow it casts is going to be very harsh and hard-edged. If the light source is further away from the object, then the shadow it casts is going to be much softer. So think about this when you apply your shadows. Number 88. Do things outside of art. Don't let art consume your life, because if you do this, then you may feel that it's more of a burden than an enjoyment. So pick up another hobby or go out with friends or family. You know, do something that is just different from art for a bit, and make sure you incorporate that into your life, because it's important that you take a break from art every now and then. Number 89. An easy way to bevel corners. Beveling is when a corner is rounded off, and you can easily do this by drawing them as a sharp corner first, and then drawing the curve before erasing around it. Number 90. Things don't have to be realistic to work. Think about 3D modelling and art. Sometimes the character models have to be horribly deformed in a way to make them look good for the camera. For example, take this shot in Encanto, where Mirabelle's arms are actually horribly stretched out to get the shot they were going for, but when you look at it from the camera's perspective, it looks perfectly fine. So think about this in your art as well. Sometimes a pose doesn't have to be 100% perfect or realistic in order to work well. It just has to look good and dynamic to the viewer's eye. Number 91. Experiment, experiment, experiment. You are not going to learn if you don't try new things. So if you've thought of something and you're not sure if it's going to work, just try it. There's no harm in giving it a go. Number 92. Use different layers to try things. If you're working on a piece and you want to add maybe a hat onto the character, but you're not entirely sure if it's going to look good, draw that hat on a separate layer, so that way if you don't end up liking it, you can just delete that layer and it won't affect anything else. Number 93. Make art for yourself. Not everything has to be posted online or made for others' enjoyment. Falling into this trap can make art feel like a burden, and we really don't want that. So make personal art. Make art that you want to draw, and don't worry about what others think or want. Number 94. Dabble in animation. Animation is a great way to help you understand your subject as a 3D object. Drawing in those movements and how it would work in an actual environment is a great way to really grasp how everything works in a 3D space. You don't have to be perfect at animation and you don't have to be an expert. Just give it a little go and see if you can try and understand it. Number 95. Consider your brush size. This can make a big difference in the patterns and textures you're going for. You may need a very tiny woven cloth structure, in which case you want to use a small brush size. Or you may need a large jagged rock structure, in which case using a bigger brush will work better. Number 96. Stereoscopic 3D effect. Another very popular thing people like to do. I personally love how this effect looks as well, and here's how to do it. Take your finished piece, duplicate it 2 times so you have 3 versions of it, add 3 layers above each one and set them to multiply. Colour one with red, one with blue and one with green, though if you want you can leave out the green one, but that's up to you. Merge them down onto each layer and then put those on screen, and then just slightly offset each, and there you go, easy stereoscopic 3D effect. Number 97. Make redraws. Essentially remake old art, because redrawing them with your new improved skills can really help you see how far you've come, and just give you this boost of motivation and confidence. Number 98. Don't sacrifice your health for art. Try things such as wrist straps or blue light glasses or even hand stretches. Make sure you've got good posture, make sure you're hydrating yourself and taking breaks. Don't hurt yourself just for the sake of your art. Make sure you stay healthy. Number 99. Multiple light sources means multiple shadows. Try not to forget this because I see a lot of people do. If you have an object in a room and there are 2 light bulbs on either side, then there's going to be a shadow on one side of the object and a shadow on the other side of the object. And where those shadows overlap will be darker. And finally, number 100, have fun. Seriously, see art as a fun hobby. It is not a chore, it is not a burden, and don't let it become that way. Just do what you want to do, have fun with it. Don't let yourself get bogged down with all these what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Experiment, have fun, because you are going to turn into an amazing artist. And there we have it. That is 100 digital art tips and tricks for beginners and experts alike. I hope you've learned something new from this, and if you have, let me know in the comments down below. And if you have any tips that weren't used in this video, then also put them down in the comments below. Let's make this comment section perfect for the artist community, where we can all learn something new, because I think that would be absolutely amazing. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, maybe leave a like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. And hit the bell to know when I next upload. So once again, thank you for watching, and I will hopefully see all of you wonderful people in the next video. Bye!